Imagine this. God hands you a temporary pause button, with just 3 uses. It can't change history, but it allows you, for 1 crucial minute each time, to stand beside 3 of humanity's most infamous and controversial assassins: Brutus in 44 BC Rome, on the day of Caesar's assassination; Charlotte Corday in 1793 Paris, at the moment she turns the handle to the bathroom door; and Gavrilo Princip in 1914 Sarajevo, on the street where the motorcade makes a wrong turn, delivering fate right before him. You can speak, but you can only ask questions, not how, but why this, why now. If you strike the right chord, perhaps he or she will hesitate for a second. If you don't, history will roll on, unchanged. First pause. Rome, a corridor in the Senate House. You see Brutus's fingers tremble slightly, not from fear, but from self-persuasion. You whisper, if he were not the father of the state, but simply your old mentor, would you still raise the dagger? Brutus glances at you, reciting a line that feels long since rehearsed. The Republic requires me to do the hard thing. You press a little closer. Requires or permits? Are you upholding the law, or are you playing the law? Is this for Rome, or is it to elevate yourself from the loyal son to the guardian father? He hesitates for half a beat. You ask one final question. If justice needs a dagger to be seen, is it still justice, or is it a ritual to prove yourself? You see his Adam's apple bob. God reminds you, time's up. With a creak, the door of history is pushed open. Second pause. Paris, the doorknob cool to the touch. Charlotte Corday walks forward, armed with her famous justification. I killed 1 man to save 100,000. You don't argue politics, you probe the psychology. Are those 100,000 faces truly before you now, or are they just a prayer to sanctify the blade? She frowns. Someone has to lance the boil. You nod, your voice softer. You believe cruelty can be born of mercy, but can you admit that this is also a cleansing of the darkness in your own heart? If you take away the number 100,000, leaving only you and him, would you still walk through that door? Her face tightens, as if a curtain has been pulled back an inch. I just want the catastrophe to stop. You follow the thread. To stop the catastrophe, is there not a third path, a slower, clumsier one less suited for a hero? If history doesn't carve you in marble, would you still recognize the person you are today? The door will still open. You know this. But between the door and its frame, a seed of doubt has fallen, making the softest of sounds. Third pause. Sarajevo, the street corner sun, is blinding. Princip sees the car make its unexpected turn, and fate feels like a spotlight suddenly thrown upon him. You stand to his left, keeping your voice at a low frequency, one that only a young man can truly hear. Brother, I know the words burning in your chest: humiliation, freedom, fatherland, sacrifice. But for a moment, don't rush to be the protagonist of history. Answer me this. Do you want freedom, or do you want your name in the story of freedom? His breathing quickens. The name is not important. Then let's cut deeper. Imagine a version without you. If you weren't here, could freedom find another path? In swearing an oath with your comrades, did you weld your who I am to what the nation must become? If this is a coincidence, are you willing to admit you've mistaken it for a calling? Your words are like a fine incision across his chest. The fervor is still there, but a sliver of cold air has slipped in. God says, time's up. You understand that history will take its course, but you also know that in these 3 dialogues, we witnessed 3 forms of an assassin's self-persuasion. Translating patricide into maintaining order. Translating cleansing into mercy. Translating coincidence into a calling. Once the language is renamed, the dagger slips on a white glove. Now, it's your turn. If you had only 3 sentences, what would you say to them? Would you intervene? Would you acquiesce? Or would you, in some sense, be persuaded by their noble reasons? I'll give you 3 seconds. Really. Close your eyes. 3, 2, 1. Once you have your answer, tell me this. In a moment of surging conviction, are you willing to save a small seat for doubt? Because when conviction welds doubt shut, the dagger begins to speak for the mind. If you enjoy this gentle yet deep dive into the psychology of history, please like and subscribe. Next time, we'll continue to peel back the hypnotic layers of words like justice, purity, and freedom to see the true psychological gears behind the blade. We don't romanticize violence, we simply deconstruct its art of persuasion for you. Forget the dagger for a moment. First, let's talk about the words. In many stories, the words are drawn long before the blade. Justice, purity, freedom, a necessary evil. These words act like a soft focus filter. Placed over anything hard and sharp, they make it appear decent, beautiful, even moving. A person's resolve often begins not with an action, but with a renaming. Psychology calls it moral disengagement. Our conscience hasn't vanished, it's just been politely asked to step aside, so it isn't in the way. From there, it's a smooth path. This is for the Republic. I kill one to save 100,000. History is calling me. They all sound right. Perhaps there is even good intent within them. But once shrouded in such grand terms, doubt can no longer find a way in. The sequence is quietly reversed. First, the means are deemed correct, and only then are the reasons recruited to provide the script. Freud would call this rationalization. I have already decided what I want to do. I'm just asking my reason to write the lines. There is another, more hidden mechanism, reaction formation. The more the heart refuses to admit its own aggression, the more the mouth will speak of its mercy. And so elimination is called stopping the bleeding, and punishment is called love. The dagger hasn't changed, the name has, and once the name changes, the feeling follows. There's another common and effective tactic, diffusing responsibility to a higher power. The organization decided. The people need this. It's the will of the times. The subject of the sentence becomes too large to grasp. By the time you ask who decided, who reviewed, and who is responsible, there is no one left to answer. Why doesn't the conscience ache? Because there is no concrete individual standing before you. The next step is even more dangerous. Dehumanizing the other from a person into a problem, a tumor, the root of all evil, a parasite. When he is merely an object, your relationship becomes that of a doctor to a disease, or a sanitation worker to trash. The action becomes smoother, and the heart much harder. Here is a little piece of psychological magic. Advantageous comparison. They are worse, so at least we're not the worst. It's a comforting phrase. But others being worse doesn't make us right. We are simply placing the worst-case scenario in the background to make the immediate bad seem less so. It doesn't lie, it just chooses the lighting. Let's switch the lens to Carl Jung. When archetypes like the hero, guardian, martyr, or avenger surge to the surface, a person can fall under a delusion. I am not just doing the right thing, I am righteousness itself. At this moment, the ego begins to inflate, doubt is locked in the cellar. The world is flattened into black and white. Jung would remind us, the archetype is vast, but it is not you. When you say, I am, you have, in fact, already surrendered yourself. From that moment on, language is in the driver's seat. You are just along for the ride. Let's turn the camera back to our three assassins. Brutus reframed patricide as restoring law and virtue. Betrayal was polished into the maintenance of order. Charlotte Corday reframed eliminating a person as purifying a catastrophe. The number 100,000 was like a white glove, making the dagger look cleaner. Gavrilo Princip reframed a coincidental wrong turn as the call of history. A boy's name was instantly welded to a national myth, as if a giant button had been pressed. They all used words to give the dagger a place to rest. As we see them, we must also see ourselves. Because we, too, rename things every day. I'm doing this for your own good. The team needs to sacrifice one person. This is a necessary corporate strategy. Before you say these things, try one small action. Swap the abstract for the concrete. Don't say a rotten apple, say John. Don't say a necessary adjustment. Say Sarah will lose her job and her kids will have to change schools. Would you still nod so quickly? Give yourself another tiny pause. Just 15 seconds will do. Anything truly necessary is not afraid of 15 seconds. If you hear the words, We must, right now, this is the only way, escape your lips, add 3 follow-up questions. Who judged it necessary? Based on what? And who can veto it? Who bears the cost? Is there compensation or shared burden? Besides this fast path, is there a slower, clumsier, less heroic path that causes less harm? And one more simple reminder. When you encounter these words, let a yellow light flash in your mind: cleansing, purification, tumor, traitor, necessary evil, historical mission, renaissance, the people's fury. They are not automatically wrong, but they deserve to be audited. Why do we fall in love with these words? Because they save us effort. Handing a complex problem over to a big word, a slogan, a grand subject, it's like stuffing a tangled mess of wires into a beautiful box. The world before us is instantly clean. The cost is that a part of us gets saved, too saved for later, or perhaps discarded entirely. That part is called empathy, patience, the part that sees the person. Which brings us back to the beginning. The dagger did not suddenly become clean, the words washed it first. When a word is noble enough, it will first dull our conscience, then thin the life of another. Mature justice does not rely on white gloves. It allows for hesitation, for retraction, for a third, clumsy-looking path. A dagger that hesitates is a human dagger, and words that glow need to be invited down from their altars, placed on the table, and examined, line by line. Only then do we decide whether to draw the blade. Walk into that Roman corridor. The air smells of wax. Footsteps are swallowed by the stone walls. Brutus is holding a dagger, but he is also holding a story about himself. He repeats a sentence in his mind. For the Republic, for the law, for virtue. It sounds like a prayer, but it's more like self-hypnosis. The superego is issuing him orders. Be restrained. Be clean. Put order back in its proper place. The question is, who defined its proper place as this? Not the law itself. It was the stricter judge inside his own mind. It's not that he felt no love. To him, Caesar was half father, half threat. When love and fear coexist, it is all too easy to give reason a starring role. To compress complexity into 2 colors, to pack hesitation into philosophy. Stoicism is a perfect anesthetic for this. Less emotion, more duty. Less feeling, more form. It appears stable. So stable that even guilt lines up neatly, arriving on schedule. The more properly the mask is worn, the more active the shadow becomes. Brutus's mask was Roman virtue, moderation, lawfulness, public spirit, and in his shadow, jealousy, cowardice, a curiosity about power, a longing for historical validation. These things cannot be given a voice. So what does he do? He lets the collective speak for them. The oaths of many men, the many hands, the many solemn faces. When there are many hands, there is no one. Responsibility is quickly atomized into a fog. The act becomes a group ritual. And rituals have a side effect. They cleanse private emotions into public justifications. Listen closely to Brutus's internal dialogue. It's not, should I harm a person? It's, am I qualified to restore order? He is playing the hand of the law. And, playing the part feels good, clean, lofty, like standing inside a statue. But statues are made of stone. There is no blood inside, no breath, and not that most dangerous question of all, am I also punishing myself? The cruelest moments of the superego are usually cloaked in virtue. It whips you while saying, this is for you. In Brutus's grammar, there is always an invisible line. Let me bear this sin. Do you see it? The desire for punishment is now entangled with the desire for justice. He needs a sin to balance the debt in his soul. And Caesar, conveniently, provides the perfect target. Close, large, and occupying the very position of father. So this is not a conflict of me versus him, but rather a duel of me versus me. Wherever the dagger falls, it will ultimately rebound upon himself. History would soon prove it. Victory did not liberate him, it only liberated his self-recrimination. When the narrative of I bear the darkness for the greater good takes hold, it becomes addictive. One becomes addicted to being the one who can bear the darkness. This is another kind of pride. Meek, respectable, and barbed. You might ask, what if, on that day, Caesar had looked at him for just a moment as an ordinary man? What if that gaze contained no empire, only the human warmth of, "Have you eaten?" Might it have slowed his hand by half a second? This isn't literary romanticism, this is psychology. Dehumanization makes action feel light, being seen makes it hesitate. Hesitation is not weakness. Hesitation is the final moment of freedom a person has between the script and their own heartbeat. Let's pull the camera back a bit. The Senate is not the only stage. We have them in our own lives. You carry the company values and call someone out in a meeting. You say it's for the organization. You say, we have to cut our losses. You feel righteous. You feel clean. You just didn't consider that sometimes being clean is a form of preservation. It stops things from rotting, but it also stops them from living. A Brutus-style restoration of order can all too easily restore order into stone. Back to the man himself. Where did Brutus's strength come from? Not entirely from anger, more from a longing to be seen by history. Who doesn't want to be seen? But there are many ways to seek it. The easiest is to find a massive abstract coordinate for yourself: Rome, law, virtue, posterity. If the coordinate is large enough, you appear small and selfless. The smaller you seem, the less likely you are to be doubted. But that muted ambition and fear will surface elsewhere. They will appear in the tone of, "It must be me," in the stride of, "My time has come," in the furrowed brow of, "If I don't, who will?" We are not demeaning his motives, we are peeling the labels off his motives. The word, patricide, is too shocking. Let's rephrase it: leaping out from under the Father's shadow. The leap can take the form of dialogue, a vote, a slow distribution of power, or a spectacular, symbolic act. The spectacular is fast, it is bright, like lightning, but after the lightning, the ground smolders, and in the smoke is new power, old vengeance, and an unfinished complexity. If we were to take away a small self-preservation skill from this psychological journey, it would be these three simple reminders. Perhaps you need them in a meeting, a relationship, or a necessary action of your own. First, when I say it's for the principle, am I just building a platform for my own aggression? Second, if I take away the public justification, leaving only me and him, can I still go through with it? Third, is there a slower, clumsier, less heroic path that might be more humane? You see, these questions aren't asking you to abandon justice. They are asking you to rescue justice from the desire to punish, to rescue order from stone, to rescue yourself from the statue. Finally, a word for Brutus, and for us. True virtue allows you to hesitate. It allows you to take a small step back from the blade's edge and place humanity back on the table. It allows you to admit, I have a shadow too. When you admit this, the shadow no longer needs to settle its accounts on someone else's body. You'd be surprised how many "it must be done this way" moments can actually wait, can be questioned again. How many "it must be me" roles can actually be shared, slowed down, and made more alive. By now, you can probably sense it. Brutus wasn't evil. He was too good, so good that he surrendered himself to a statue of goodness. A statue has no heart. But you do. Take your heart back. Don't hand it over to grammar. Don't hand it over to a collective ritual. Don't hand it over to that inner judge who whispers in your ear, always under the guise of virtue. The next time it hands you a blade of justice, do one thing first. Feel its temperature. If it's hot, your shadow is probably running a fever. We arrive at that door in Paris. The handle is cold, like a word yet to be spoken. From inside, the sound of water, the rustle of paper. She clutches her famous line tightly, "I kill one to save 100,000. It's like a talisman. And a white glove. With it on, any motive can appear a little cleaner. You know she wasn't born cold, she just renamed her own sharpness. This is how reaction formation works. The more you refuse to admit the aggression in your heart, the more you must declare yourself merciful. Thus, removing a person is renamed stopping a catastrophe. Cruelty is renamed cleansing. Numbers are the best anesthetic. 100,000, a scale large enough to make a single face fade into the background. Before her is not him, but the source of the calamity. Not a person, but a symptom. The boil metaphor is very useful. It makes the dagger seem like a surgical instrument. To not act would seem irresponsible. See how the language has shifted the ethics? The question has changed from, am I allowed to harm a person? To, can I afford to stand idly by? Once the problem is rewritten, the answer naturally changes with it. She had already won half the battle outside the door, because she had won it in her words. She needed a version of who I am, the pure me, the brave me, the me who can bear the stigma for the sake of the many. Jung would remind us, at this moment, the archetypes of the maiden divided by saint and the avenger overlap, like two electrical currents in parallel. The ego quietly inflates. I am not just doing a thing, I am the embodiment of this thing. The fantasy of being carved in marble is more addictive than the fear of being misunderstood. Stone feels no pain. People do. Choosing stone is a way of escaping fragility. It's not that she didn't see other doors, it's just that those doors were too slow, too noisy, too much like reality. Negotiation, compromise, waiting, returning to the same table over and over. It's hard to become a legend on that path. Legends require clean lines. Reality only gives you a tangled mess. So she folded up the complexity and tucked it into 4 words. Eliminate the source. The world was suddenly clear. Hesitation was also folded up. Questions were stuffed into a drawer. The drawer was shut. Hard. Let's step back and look at the psychological trajectory. First, she abstracts the other, the root of the disaster. Then, she sanctifies herself, the merciful blade. Neither end is human. The human realm is cleared, and the ritual begins. This is precisely what we must be wary of. When language is solemn enough, it shields us from all the details. In the details are breath, skin, trembling, the things that make you slow down. Solemnity does not like to slow down. Solemnity likes the finality of a gavel strike. To speak a slightly more offensive truth, this is also a form of control. Compressing a complex world into black and white, fitting another's fate into a narrative of, for their own good. We do this daily in intimate relationships. Listen to me, just be harsh this one time, and it'll be over. It's common in companies too. For the good of the team, we have to cut off the limb. We all like being the one who dares to make the cut. It feels a lot like virtue, but a part of it is actually anxiety. Control staunches anxiety. Purity is just the coat it wears. You might ask, but wasn't her goodwill genuine? It was. Motives are never monochrome. She genuinely believed she could stop the bleeding. And she was genuinely trying to wash away the darkness in her own heart. The issue isn't authenticity, it's cost and options. Who bears the cost? And were the options deleted too soon? If the number 100,000 is not allowed to be questioned, then this is religion, not decision-making. Religion requires sacrifice. Decision-making requires proof. Take away the number, leave only 2 names, and ask again, would you still go in? If you weren't carved into a statue but simply forgotten, would you still be so certain? If there were a slower, clumsier path, one that would be mocked, one that might fail, but one that didn't require killing, would you be willing to try it for 3 months? These questions are not romantic, nor are they heroic. They simply put the person back in the scene. Perhaps she would say, there's no time. Yes, no time is often the ultimatum we give ourselves. Those words are like a gust of wind, blowing all reservations off the table. But you know that many no-time moments are actually, I don't want to see the complexity anymore. Complexity is exhausting. Purity is light. And under pressure, lightness is incredibly seductive. Back to the phrase, I kill one to save 100,000. It's so useful it could fit any era. It makes the dagger seem like one side of a scale. On the other side, 100,000. Who could disagree? That's precisely why we must learn a small action, to break down the 100,000 into 100,000 ones. And ask, does every single one agree? Does every one of them know they've been included in your equation? If you are only moving stones around in your mind, then admit it. This is a psychological, self-soothing, not a mandate signed by all. The moment she pushed the door, perhaps she hesitated by a centimeter. Hesitation is a moral muscle. If left unused, it atrophies. We don't need to judge her for that centimeter. We only need to save that moment for ourselves. The next time you say I must, leave a centimeter of space for hesitation. Let it stand there for a moment. Perhaps nothing will change. Or perhaps a third path will appear. I don't want to demonize her, nor do I want to romanticize her. I just want to hand that white glove back. You can wear it if you wish, but before you do, look at your own hand. There is warmth there, and sweat, and that little impulse to be seen, to be praised, to clean up the world. Acknowledge it. Once you do, you no longer need to let it wander about in a cloak of mercy. You can let it sit down, have a drink of water, and listen to the sound of another's breathing. A final thought, for her and for us. When purity picks up a dagger, its first victim is often the one holding it. The blade is so sharp that the echo begins from within. You might be able to block out the noise of the world, but it's much harder to block out that question in the night. Did I just use a well-intentioned word to cleanse away complexity? If the answer brings you to silence, don't be afraid. Silence itself is where the dagger stops. The real choice begins in the next second. We arrive at the street corner in Sarajevo. The sun is harsh. The air feels coiled tight. The car makes its unexpected turn. Fate suddenly throws a spotlight onto a young man's face. The crowd shoves. The noise turns white. In his chest, only 4 words remain: humiliation, freedom, fatherland, sacrifice. Before you rush to judge him, listen for a quieter sound. A name. In youth, a name is like a coat that doesn't quite fit yet. You're always trying to fill it out, trying to make the world say it with a slightly different tone. When the path of life is too narrow, a story becomes a wide-open substitute. If you can't have an expansive life, you reach for an expansive narrative. This is very human, and very dangerous. The oath of comrades will weld the self to a larger noun. Us. The nation. History. The tighter the circle, the more singular the voice. Doubt is seen as betrayal. Fear is interpreted as weakness. So you learn to hear coincidence as a calling. You learn to treat opportunity as a command. The driver's mistake suddenly becomes what fate has arranged. When the light is too bright, a person's shadow deforms. You think you're standing straight, but you've been stretched out by the light. He wasn't born to harm anyone. He just wanted his life to match the story he believed in. The story needed a button. Press it, and the era would turn. The button is cool. So cool it makes the slow acts of waiting, compromising, and negotiating seem pathetic. The slow path doesn't make heroes. The shortcut makes it into the history books. You see, the anxiety of a name finds its painkiller right here. Let's zoom in closer. The feeling of shame is magnified in a young body. A failure, a memory of humiliation, gets co-opted by the anger of the group. You look up and find your own emotions have been draped in the nation's colors. Personal pain puts on a grand cloak. The pain, therefore, becomes speakable, and therefore, much harder to let go of. We won't offer any operational details. We will only trace the psychological path. Step 1. Find a great source of pain. Step 2. Name it with a sacred word. Step 3. Let your comrades dilute your hesitation. Step 4. Misread coincidence as destiny. Step 5. Tell yourself that not acting now is a betrayal. At this point, the dagger has not yet appeared. The decision has long been made. If someone had stopped him at that moment, what might they have said? Perhaps 3 questions would have sufficed. If your name wasn't in it, could this have gone another way? If you've misread destiny, who pays the price? Do you want freedom, or do you want a version of yourself that glows in the story of freedom? These 3 questions are not pretty, nor are they pleasant to hear. Their mission is simple: to pull a person out of the story for a moment. To unweld who I am from what we must become. To let coincidence be coincidence again. To let the button revert to being an overheated metaphor. You might say, but his anger was real. Yes, it was real. So real it could burn. But anger cannot be your map. It can only be your compass. It tells you where the problem is, but it cannot complete the journey of how to get there for you. A map requires details. It requires multiple routes. It requires you to admit that some answers won't appear today, or even in your lifetime. This is a heavy sentence, but it rescues the name from heroism. It rescues freedom from a single plot story. Let's step back again and look at ourselves. We also mistake coincidence for destiny. The exact question we studied for is on the test we think the universe is looking out for us. A message arrives at the very moment we're thinking of something we think fate is passing us. A note: the human brain loves to tell stories. Tell enough of them, and it forgets to verify. So the next time you feel this is a moment of destiny, perform a small ritual first. Count to 10. Write down an alternative explanation in your mind. Ask a harsher question. If I am wrong, who gets hurt? Only act if you can bear the answer. If you can't, take the slow road. The slow road isn't glamorous, but it lets the name live a little longer. Some might say, the slow road is for cowards. If you were there, you would have understood. Perhaps I too would have been swept up in the rising blood and the shouts. But I hope that, at the very least, before being swept away, I would have held on to a centimeter of hesitation. And let that centimeter help me see. On the other side is not a button, but a person who eats breakfast in the morning and gets sleepy at night. And on my side is not history, but a young person afraid of being ignored. We do not demonize the boy, nor do we romanticize him. We only remember that moment forever, when coincidence turns a corner. Don't rush to dress it in the armor of destiny. First, give it an ordinary coat. Let it sit down, have a drink of water, and listen to the heartbeats of others. When the wind dies down, then decide whether to write it into the history books. If you've made it this far and are willing to take these 3 questions with you, then our night has been worthwhile. When a name is no longer anxious, a story does not need to be spectacular. When coincidence is not misread, a dagger does not need to speak for us. Freedom will arrive a little more slowly, but when it comes, it won't need blood for proof. Conclusion. Walk through this entire night, and you will find a thin thread. It begins with words, winds past justice, purity, and freedom, and entangles our conscience. It begins with the Father and the shadow, twisting self-discipline and punishment together, making us think severity is a form of goodness. It begins with a white glove, folding complexity into eliminating the source, making us think that being clean is being right. It begins with a name, elevating coincidence to destiny, making us think a spectacular act is the answer. The thread is thin, pulled too quickly, it is invisible. Slow down, and it begins to glow. We have not cast anyone as a monster, nor have we crowned anyone a hero. We have simply taken apart the art of persuasion for you to see. First, rename, then, find reasons. First, create the sacred, then, lock away doubt. First, enlarge the subject, then, erase the person. Once these 3 steps are complete, the decision is already made, long before the dagger appears. If I could leave you with only one sentence tonight, it would be this: when conviction welds doubt shut, the dagger will speak for you. And true, mature courage is saving a small stool for doubt. Let it sit at the table, even if only for the space of a centimeter. The next time you hear a necessary evil, don't nod right away. Ask, who judged it necessary? Who bears the evil? And is there a third, slower path? The next time you want to say, I'm doing this for your own good, first translate your good into his name and his schedule for tomorrow. Then ask yourself, if I didn't have the white glove, would I still do this? The next time you feel, destiny is calling me, first count to 10. Write down the opposite explanation. Then ask, if I am wrong, who gets hurt? This is not weakness. This is bringing the human back into the room. It's bringing order out of stone, taking purity off the blade's edge, and rescuing the name from legend. You will find that the slow road isn't glamorous, but it allows more people to arrive alive. You will also find that hesitation is not a waste of time. It is saving us from a lifetime of regret. If you're willing, we can continue to deconstruct things this way in the future. Deconstruct words. Deconstruct narratives. Deconstruct the mechanisms that make us quickly angry, quickly choose sides, and quickly act. We'll place them on the table, one by one, turn on the light, flip them over, label them, and audit them, until the dagger no longer speaks for us. Until we can truly use our words to invite each other back to the table. That's all for tonight. If this journey made you slow down, even just for a centimeter, that's enough. If you enjoyed this gentle yet deep dive deconstruction, leave a like, and subscribe on your way out. See you next time. We'll continue to pull the dagger out of meaning. Good night, and sweet dreams. Thank you for your support. If you choose to like and subscribe, I will create better content for you.